I have spent ages on my craft piecing together every minute detail to bring together such an amazing character, only to throw it out the window at the last second because I had a wonderful impulse, a bit, a joke, a mere ridiculous reference that only I will understand, or perhaps a character build that will make all of my DMs or game runners look with a furrowed brow in confusion and worry. But even with those Chaos Gremlin decisions, I still managed to pull together a compelling backstory for my characters in some kind of useful way. So how do we go about writing a compelling story while allowing the fun and witty ideas to come through? Hi, I'm Merritt, and seeing that you're here, I'm assuming you're looking to make worthwhile stories of your own. There are so many ways one can go about bringing depth to their realms, whether it's thought out world building, specific mechanics, or the host of characters within the realm. One thing everyone can do, whether they're planning on DMing a tabletop game, joining a LARP, or devising their own written works, is creating useful backstories for their characters. Keyword being useful. Now, this doesn't mean that everyone's going to have some high epic fantasy background. Not everyone is the main character, but it doesn't mean that there's nothing happening in their lives either. Every character should be treated as a person with their own unique stories and problems. The scope and scale will change depending on which character or person we are talking about, but they all tend to follow the same formulas. Now, I won't be talking about how to find inspiration for these concepts and characters today, but I will be walking you through my entire process on how to do that, along with some tips and tricks in the future. But in the meantime, if you want to know a little bit more about my process for creating character costumes instead, you can click up here to that video or in the description down below. So to help you, and let's face it, to remind me how to write a character backstory, let's start with defining some useful terms. Character roles and archetypes. When crafting a well-rounded story, there are 7 key roles that characters can fit into. Protagonists, the main characters, the heroes, what is being focused on in the narrative. The antagonists, the villains, the people that the protagonist butt heads with, basically your opposites, the opponents to the focus. Love interests, generally these often go with the main character. They don't have to, they can go for anyone. Confidants. These are your secret keepers. These are also often mentors. Deuteragonists. These are like the second best characters. These are often the best friend. These are people who can often become antagonists as the stories go on, depending on the actions of the protagonist. Tertiary characters. I like to say that they're just happy to be here. That is not always the case, but basically these are your NPCs. And then of course your foils. These are the people who are exactly opposite of your protagonist. Oftentimes they are the antagonist, it just kind of comes along with the territory. All of these are built to help develop a narrative and push the story along. Depending on who you choose to focus on, all of these placements can shift. In a LARP, everyone is going to see themselves as the protagonist, and in life, everyone is the protagonist of their own story, except we do not always fill that role at all times. If you do, you probably have some control issues because not everyone is always leading everything that's happening to them. A good example of this would be if you ever watched a Karen cuss out a retail worker. Unless you are stepping in to interfere with that conversation, you are the tertiary character in that moment. And I need you to keep that in mind when you're creating your LARP characters specifically. Be willing to just be along for the ride in some instances. And also when you're RPing in other situations or you're writing your narratives, you have to keep in mind situations like that and who is going to be in what position where. So along the same lines of character roles, there are also character archetypes, and I'm not going to go into huge detail on these because honestly the list can keep going on and on and on forever. These archetypes are used to determine what kind of story you want to tell, not the story itself. So it's kind of like determining if you wanted Italian food or Mexican for dinner tonight, but when you get to the restaurant, you still have to actually make all the decisions of what food you want to eat. What kind of pasta are you going to eat? What kind of sauce do you want on it? How much cheese are you going to have the Olive Garden attendee put on there before they get really uncomfortable? Considering the world. When creating your characters, it is vitally important to understand the conventions of the world they are currently residing in. This is going to change the way that they are not only going to act, but how they are perceived as well. If you create a character that will go against those societal norms, it is anticipated that it will grate some people. And you can make characters that go against things, but there will be consequences of it, and you do need to be able to work into your character feasibly, having lived a life of being that kind of outskirt, depending on how long it's been. This helps bring up a lot of other questions too while you're at it, like, is this personality facade? Do they have self-esteem issues? Is it going to get the attention of somebody else? And if so, how do they feel about it? You could even go as far as to use this as a way for them to create a deeper bond with another person, or to break some of those bonds as well. Nothing exists in a bubble. Just keep that in mind. This is not to say that these are all be-all end-alls either. Nothing has to be that major, but it also shouldn't always be something that you just overlook. Just be aware of what is even possible in the world. For example, is magic even a thing? What is technology like? Know the standard views of the area so you can add some flavor and go from there. If you're not done writing your world building yet, or you don't know a lot of it, don't worry too much. Just make sure to think about it a little bit, have some ideas, and go from there. Life events and secrets. Knowing the setting and some base archetypes helps lead you into some key life moments for your character. These events help shape the true past of your character backstory writing endeavors. Life events can be minor, small moments of fondness, kindness, memories with other characters to get you started, or they could be major and pivotal moments in their time period. And these events can be great ways for you to create connections with other characters. This is a great place to develop any secrets that your characters might have. Have they stolen something along the way? Did they just cheat on a math test when they were younger and they just feel really guilty about it? Maybe they just don't like their family and they choose not to talk about them a lot. Finding something little in there that might connect to a major life event is a really good way of giving you that kind of starting point. A note with the secrets though, you don't want to make them so extreme that it makes your character overwritten, and you also don't want to hold on to them too tightly. The idea with having a character secret is that eventually someone will learn it. Otherwise, there's just this information that you're kind of harboring on, and it never really helps develop anything as a story. So find someone you can trust, find another character that you can confide in, that your characters can confide in, and start seeding things. Obviously, don't just blurt it out all at once, or it's not going to seem like a secret, but having something that you can slowly drip things into is going to give you the best results. Character traits and flaws. So to round this up, creating a list of character traits and flaws is going to help you iron out those details of your characters that you haven't quite determined yet. Don't worry about finishing your character's arc, especially if you're role-playing with this character. You want to give them some room to grow, and if you've already had them solve all their problems, finish a whole story, kind of come to a head on something, then you don't really have anywhere for them to go. If you want to come into something completely baby-faced and new, that is totally an option, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just might take you a little bit more time to get into things and to find something to do. And of course, don't forget to incorporate flaws, something that your character can work on specifically. No person is perfect. A lot of people like to include their own personal flaws if they are role-playing a character. I would be careful with putting your own flaws in there because you don't want to metagame too much. So if you're RPing and you know that your own flaw is this thing and you're thinking ahead, you might try to overcome that. So just be a little aware of what you're putting in there. And of course, try not to build a Mary Sue if you can. With all of these concepts, it can be easy to get bogged down in the details, so I recommend using the 5-3-2-1 method. If, however, you are kind of stuck with information, I've also included a list of questions that you could ask yourself instead in a blog post in the description down below. But what is the 5-3-2-1 method? Basically, it is a way to go through all of the concepts that I've already discussed throughout this video, but by breaking it down into 5 major life events, 3 character traits, 2 flaws, and 1 secret. And of course, because I like to end all of my videos with an example, I'm gonna walk you through how I created my character, Ripley. And since this is a background description, I don't really feel the need to have to tell you about who Ripley is, because I think you're gonna figure it out as we go through this. At a very young age, Ripley was pulled onto a pirate ship. She didn't know anyone on it, and there was really no reason for her to be there, except for the fact that the captain at the time thought that she might be useful in helping them get through siren-infested waters. Now, Ripley knew nothing about the sirens then, and would not for many years. But over time, she grew up with the crew, and she saw them as family. Only, her name wasn't Ripley. Someone spelled it wrong along the way, and it went from being Ripple to what she is known as now. Eventually, she wound up meeting the sirens for the first time, and they beckoned her to join them in the water as one of them. Now this confused her, as she wouldn't understand why they would want to do that. They made it through that encounter, but it always stuck with her. Eventually they moved on, and Ripley was used to start recruiting people for the ship. Over time, things got sour, and eventually, the captain died, and Ripley was left in charge. She is powerful and in charge, but stoic and reserved. Usually, though, she is pretty much unfazed by most situations. Though, she is a pirate, and has been raised to be such, and she really, really enjoys messing with people. If you ask her, she'll deny it, but she's still uncertain if maybe, just maybe, she is a siren after all. And because of that, she refuses to sing. Well, that is it. That's all I had for you today. I hope you learned something about writing your character backstory. If you still have questions, or you just want to tell me about your characters, please leave them in the comments down below. I will also take suggestions for future videos if you have specific topics that you want to know more about. I'm on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, all as Merit Worthy, and I hope you know that your story is worthy of some merit. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye. Oh, I just broke this chair. Great. I just lost my script. I'm not gonna lie to you, having that candle lit so close to those books is frightening.